Poštovani gledalci, dobrodošli u još jedno izdanje emisije Granice Istoka. Ja sam Harun Karčić. Uspon Kine kao ekonomske, političke i vojne sile jedan je od najvažnijih događaja u geopolitičkom poretku u 21. stoljeću. Njena transformacija u svjetsku silu narušila je donedavno neupitnu američku hegemoniju u azijsko-pacifičkoj regiji, gdje su Sjedinjene Američke Države suvereno dominirale od kraja Drugog svjetskog rata. Danas su te dvije zemlje u direktnom natjecanju za dominaciju Azije, a to je narušilo postojeću ravnotežu snaga i unijelo nove tenzije u ionako složene političke odnose. Kakva je vojna, ekonomska i politička uloga Kine u tom dijelu svijeta i kako to posmatraju manje azijske zemlje, analiziramo u nastavku emisije. Prije razgovora sa našim gostima, pogledajmo uvodni prilog o modernizaciji kineske vojske.
Kineska vojna moć predstavljena je na paradi prošle godine, a bilo je komada oružja koji su se prvi put mogli vidjeti. Još u oktobru vojni analitičari su naglašavali da je kineski tehnološki napredak gotovo bez premca. Novim istraživanjem otkrivena je dramatična razlika u količini oružja koju proizvodi Peking u odnosu na period prije 10 godina kada su morali da kupuju većinu vojne opreme.
I think it's very important information for us and the world because we know that, of course, China used to rely on importing weapons from Russia, but we see now that it can almost completely build and produce its weapons for its own military. And we also see that the industry is at a point where other countries are demanding its weapons.
Iz Štokholmskog međunarodnog instituta za mirovna istraživanja kažu da je Kina po proizvodnji oružja sada iza Sjedinjenih Američkih Država, a ispred Rusije.
There have been a number of shifts in military policy within China. First off, they've reduced over that period almost 600,000 troops, but they put more money into modernizing the army. The two aircraft carriers are in production. One they had bought. Those are big ticket items.
Veličina ove kineske industrije je misterija, a Peking podatke o njoj čuva kao tajnu. Međutim, analitičari pomenutog instituta dobili su uvid u rad 4 velike kineske kompanije. Kažu da 3 mogu da budu među 10 globalnih proizvođača oružja. Kina prodaje oružje zemljama poput Pakistana, Bangladeša i Mijanmara.
A lot of the buyers of Chinese weapons are very much more friendly towards the Chinese government. It's also the case that they cannot certainly ascertain weapons from Western producers such as the UK or Germany or the US, and such rely on China to produce or to provide less sophisticated and sometimes less expensive weapons to be used for their specific purposes.
U 2018. širom svijeta je potrošeno 1,8 hiljada milijardi dolara, što je najviše od kraja hladnog rata, a prema istraživanju porasla su izdvajanja u Vašingtonu i Pekingu.
Ujedinjene nacije procjenjuju da 80% svjetske trgovine po obimu i 70% po vrijednosti se transportuje morskim putem. Od tog procenta globalne trgovine morskim putem, 60% prođe kroz Aziju. Preciznije, kada sirovine i energenti idu prema Aziji ili gotovi proizvodi iz Azije prema Bliskom istoku, Africi i Europi, oni u većini slučajeva moraju proći kroz Južno Kinesko more. To ga čini jednim od najprometnijih morskih ruta na svijetu. Toliko je prometno da 1/3 globalne pomorske trgovine vrijednosti 3,37 biliona dolara godišnje prođe tim morem. A pošto ima jedno od najdužih obala sa Južnim Kineskim morem, Kini je ta ruta od izuzetnog značaja. Ona je druga najveća ekonomija svijeta, a većina njene trgovine odvija se morskim putem i to kroz Južno Kinesko more. Gledano pojedinačno po zemljama, kroz Južno Kinesko more prođe 64% kineske pomorske trgovine, 42% japanske i 14% američke. More je istovremeno predmet teritorijalnih sporova Kine, Vijetnama, Filipina, Tajvana, Malezije i Bruneja. Peking polaže pravo na blizu 80% Južnog Kineskog mora, uključujući teritorije blizu Malezije i Indonezije, koje su udaljene čak 2000 km od kineske obale. S ciljem očuvanja dominacije u tako strateški važnoj regiji, Peking već godinama raspoređuje vojsku u tom moru sa sve većim prisustvom ratnih brodova, podmornica i većim brojem vojnih vježbi. Također, gradi umjetne otoke koji će služiti kao vojne baze s ciljem demonstracije moći. More je glavna okosnica sinocentričnog poretka u tom dijelu Azije i kamen spoticanja između Washingtona i Pekinga. Sjedinjene Američke Države planiraju u narednim godinama prebaciti 60% ratne mornarice u azijsko-pacifičku regiju kako bi balansirale kineskom gomilanju vojne moći. Tu je i još jedan razlog. Morsko dno bogato je prirodnim resursima, a vjeruje se da ima neiskorištene zalihe minerala, plina i nafte. Američka agencija za energiju procjenjuje da Južno kinesko more sadrži 11 milijardi barela nafte i 190 biliona kubnih metara prirodnog plina. Drugi naučnici procjenjuju da ima čak 22 milijarde barela nafte i 290 biliona kubnih metara plina. Također, 10% konzumirane ribe u svijetu dolazi iz Južnog kineskog mora, a to je hrana za 100 miliona ljudi. Kineski državni megaprojekt Jedan pojas, jedan put ima pored kopnene i morsku rutu koja prolazi kroz more. Taj projekt Pekingu služi kao instrument za uspostavu ekonomskog i političkog utjecaja te jačanje njegove meke moći na globalnom planu. Kina njime želi osigurati dotok strateških sirovina poput energenata i minerala nužnih za održavanje njene zahuktale ekonomije kao i prodaju gotovih proizvoda. Američki strateški zaokret, poznat kao zaokret ka Aziji, predstavlja vanjsko-političku platformu s ciljem očuvanja nadmoći SAD-a u azijsko-pacifičkoj regiji, sve u pokušaju smanjenja utjecaja Kine. Kako su na to reagovale manje azijske države, pojašnjava nam profesor Benjamin Barton.
Now, Benjamin Barton, hello and welcome to Al Jazeera. Now, it is undeniable that China plays a major role in the Asia-Pacific, both as an economic and a strategic partner to neighboring countries. This role seems to be set to expand exponentially in the coming years. Should smaller Asian states, such as Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, be worried?
I think you can look at this from two angles. The first one is from a physical security or military perspective. In that regard, I think that the threat is sometimes exaggerated as to how China might seek to undermine the security of some of these states. First of all. Secondly, many of the countries in the region have quite good relations with the United States and sometimes have a treaty, a security treaty binding them with the US, which means that in any case, if there was such a security threat, the United States would probably intervene or at least put pressure on China not to act. I think the greatest threat that we need to consider for Southeast Asian states in this regard is the political leverage which China can possibly draw from the greater economic integration that some of these countries face with regards to China. The best example of that is with the Belt and Road Initiative. So, of course, Southeast Asian states require investment, for example, in infrastructure. But the risk is that too many deals with Chinese companies might create a situation of dependence politically towards China, which then would be a risk in terms of the freedom that these countries have in making their own political choices.
Mm-hmm. But should Southeast Asia be viewed as China's rightful interest zone, as its natural habitat, if you will? And is the US presence here seen as that of an intruder?
I think that China would like us to believe, or at least some parts of the Chinese Communist Party would like us to believe that this is part of a kind of greater zone of Chinese influence, although China does preach non-interference as one of its core foreign policy principles. It is and President Xi Jinping has talked about a community of common destiny with regards to Asia as a whole, so wanting to create, for example, an Asian security community where the United States would have a lesser role, and therefore that would naturally translate into China having greater influence. The US does have the benefit of a historical presence in Asia from a security but also commercial perspective, which makes its presence uncontroversial as opposed to China's. So in a way, although much is said about US retrenchment, particularly visible under President Trump, and a growing Chinese presence, I think the reality is that it's still more controversial to imagine China replacing the US in providing some form of security guarantee for countries in the region, as opposed to the current status quo where the United States is still a regional hegemon, if you like.
Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to China's foreign policy toolkit, we have seen the use of economic statecraft. We've seen the use of soft power by reconnecting with the Chinese diaspora in countries like Malaysia and Singapore. And we've also seen the use of hard power as in island building in the South China Sea. How is that manifested in the case of Malaysia?
In the case of Malaysia, I think the use of reliance upon the Chinese diaspora hasn't been as clear-cut as it was, for example, in the 1960s and 70s, when Mao Zedong was using ideology as a tool to help promote Chinese interests overseas. That being said, in terms of the physical threat of island building and claims over the South China Sea, I think Malaysia has indeed been more proactive, like many other ASEAN states, in seeking to assert its own interests. The only contention is, of course, that China has been quite deft in playing different ASEAN member states off against one another and utilizing, as I said in the answer to your first question, China's economic power in order to impact and influence ASEAN states such as Malaysia to adopt a position which is more in line with China's interests. And that's an issue which goes beyond China's relations with Southeast Asia, because other actors, extra-regional actors, are also very much concerned about the freedom of navigation and the rules which govern the freedom of navigation in the South China Sea.
Mm-hmm. Now, the U.S. has years ago declared its pivot to Asia policy, yet it has been losing influence in this part of the world, as we have seen in the case of the Philippines recently, when the government canceled its military agreement with the U.S. Why have things not been going so well for Washington?
I think that the pivot to Asia was, first of all, the need for the United States administration under President Obama to put the emphasis away from the Middle East and back on East Asia in order to guarantee US primacy in the region. But the difficulty was that when President Obama thought about the implementation of the pivot to Asia, he had to consider how to factor China into this. And the aim was to maintain US primacy in the region by granting China a greater role, so to speak. I'm not sure that the pivot to Asia would have required a long-term implementation and the necessary tools which go with it. The thing is that by the time it started to become implemented, this is when we were seeing the end of the Obama administration. And not all of the key allies as part of the pivot to Asia were necessarily aligned to the US's position. I would say that on top of that, although the Chinese government has the ability not only to make long-term planning and to stick to it, because there's no change of government that we expect in China at least, it has the policy tools to influence and rival, and the Belt and Road Initiative is one of these. That being said, even though you do see cases like the Philippines, which have been enticed by carrots being dangled by China and wanting to move away from the United States, the fundamentals of the US presence in the region, which is underpinned by the hubs and spokes model, which was put in place during the Cold War era, is still of actuality. It still exists. So the US is still the security guarantor for a number of states in the region. If we're talking about East Asia, you can look at Japan, South Korea, Taiwan. And it still has a military presence which is considered benign, whereas China's isn't. And if China was to seek to replace that, I think that would cause a lot more commotion and be a lot more difficult for China to aspire to. So although we are seeing a change and some countries are balancing or hedging between the US and China, I think China still has a long way to go before it supersedes the role that the US plays in the region.
Now, we've seen China investing heavily in its One Belt, One Road initiative over the past decade. What is of greater importance to Beijing, its economy or its political standing in the world?
I'd say that the BRI is pretty much both, because although at heart it is all about helping certain markets in China find opportunities outside of China, because we see that, particularly on the eastern coast of China, some industries, the construction industry, needs new opportunities because markets are quite saturated. The Belt and Road Initiative is, above all, to create those opportunities for those companies with the support of policy banks in China. That being said, we do see that some of the projects which are financed financially are not viable. So therefore, there must also be some political or strategic elements to it. And the BRI has also been rolled out focusing on developing countries, first and foremost. So, I think there's also a political aim there for China to seek to, maybe in the long term, change the order of world politics, but doing it from the bottom up, meaning leaning on developing countries and wanting their support and their political support in order to rise up.
All right, Benjamin, it was a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Iako Sjedinjene Američke Države i dalje imaju najveći vojni budžet na svijetu, Kina u protekle 2 decenije postepeno, ali sigurno, povećava sredstva za vojsku. Više detalja u grafici koja slijedi. Pojava virusa COVID-19 ima i geopolitičke posljedice. Nakon prvobitnih propusta i zataškavanja pojave virusa, vlada u Pekingu odlučila je ponuditi iskustvo i medicinsku pomoć drugim zemljama i time popraviti svoj ugled. Detaljnije o tome razgovarao sam sa novinarom Jamesom Dorseyem iz Singapura. James, hello and welcome to the Al Jazeera Balkans channel. Now to start with, does the coronavirus have the potential to undermine the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party, and should it be rightfully considered China's Chernobyl moment?
I think it's too early to say. There's no question that the coronavirus in China, but also elsewhere, is a game changer. I think what we're going to see in China initially is a strengthening of an already very autocratic regime. But I also think that, and that's not, again, not exclusive to China, if the fact of the matter is that this is a crisis that was manhandled by virtually everybody, with the exception of Singapore, Taiwan, and South Korea, and in the first instance, mishandled by the Chinese. With other words, they were not transparent about what was going on. They did not recognize immediately how serious this was, and they suppressed the voices that were warning them. It's a pattern that we've seen elsewhere in the world, but it's a pattern which, given that this is a crisis that affects everybody's life in such a direct way, is likely to have consequences over a period of time.
Mm-hmm. Now, with millions of face masks, low-interest loans, and teams of medical experts, is China trying to paint itself as the Good Samaritan while deflecting criticism over its initial missteps in handling the virus?
Well, I think there's no doubt that China at the moment is doing the right thing in helping others. That does not distract from its responsibility that it has, having been the origin of the virus and the way it handled it in the initial days, which prompted others to handle it similarly. So, yes, it is an attempt. They are trying to change the narrative. I think that may prove to be difficult. Once we get over the hump of this virus, there is going to be a lot of debate, a lot of discussion, a lot of analysis, and it's not sure that the Chinese will come out of that smelling like roses.
Mm-hmm. Now, while the geopolitical implications of the virus should be rightfully considered secondary to issues of health and safety, do you believe that in the long run they will be just as consequential for the United States and for China?
Well, I think there are two things here. One is that this is going to be consequential for everybody. It's going to be very consequential for China. China has the advantage that it is starting to try and get its economy going again. That's proving to be not that easy. The United States has yet to reach that stage. But I think the unfortunate part of this is that there really are very fundamental questions that are raised by this virus that are not going to be addressed. So, with other words, what we have learned from the Chinese experience is, and that's something we already knew, but it was driven home, that an endemic in one country influences countries across the globe and has the potential of creating a pandemic. So, with other words, the question of proper health infrastructure is no longer a national question. It's a global question and a global security question, which also raises the whole issues of those parts of the world where the virus is potentially really going to hit home, and we may not have seen that yet. And those are conflict-ridden zones like northern Syria, like Yemen, and like Libya that have no health infrastructure to speak of. And if that starts a contagious process, then really we're seeing carnage.
Mm-hmm. Now, what do you make of China's image currently in Southeast Asia, and how is China trying to transform its image from the initial mistakes they made when the virus first appeared to now helping other countries, but also not only Asian countries, but also faraway European countries like Italy and Spain?
Well, first of all, I think that you need to look at Southeast Asia country by country rather than as a region when it comes to these issues. So, with other words, you have countries that have been far more predisposed towards China. For example, Cambodia and Laos. You've had countries that have been trying to strike far more of a balance, including Singapore, including Indonesia, including Vietnam. I don't think that the way China has handled its crisis is going to really do it a lot of good when it comes to a country like Singapore or Indonesia, where you're seeing a degree of anti-Chinese sentiment, even among a population that is ethnically Chinese.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you analyze China's interest and influence in Southeast Asia, would you agree that it was not Beijing's principal foreign policy priority in the 1970s, 80s, and 1990s? What has changed over the last 20 years?
Well, first of all, Southeast Asia has grown out to be an economic behemoth. Second of all, it's as China evolves as a global power, this is obviously part of its backyard, or it looks at it as part of its backyard. So, with other words, we're dealing with a very different China than 30, 40 years ago, with a very different perspective of the world.
Mm-hmm. Now, what tools does China use to beef up its image in Southeast Asia? Are we talking only about soft power or hard power as well?
Well, we're talking primarily about soft power. Again, the Chinese see a lot of their policy approaches through the prism of economics. I think they may be making a mistake by reducing everything to economics, but nonetheless, that's the way they do it. There's obviously also soft power in the terms of a large Chinese ethnic community across Southeast Asia. But there's also been hard power. Look at the South China Sea, which affects countries like the Philippines, like Indonesia, like Vietnam, who have territorial claims of their own.
Mm-hmm. Right. James Dorsey, it was a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure to be with you.
Kinesko svojatanje morskih područja u Južnom Kineskom moru, njena militarizacija umjetnih otoka i presretanje stranih brodova i borbenih aviona jasan su pokazatelj da će Kina u narednim godinama i decenijama nastaviti sa nasrtljivim pozicioniranjem u zonama njenog strateškog interesa. Sa sve slabijim transatlantskim vezama i gubitkom utjecaja širom svijeta, male su vjerovatnoće da će SAD uspjeti kontrirati kineskoj ekspanziji. Poštovani gledalci, bilo je to sve u ovom izdanju emisije Granice Istoka. Ukoliko ste propustili bilo koji dio, emisiju možete pogledati na našoj web stranici balkans.aljazeera.net. Hvala na pažnji.